In this demo, I will be giving an overview of the new release of Boris Continuum Complete for Adobe After Effects. BCC is at version 7 now. It is re-engineered from the ground up on the 64-bit platform to take advantage of the new Adobe CS5 64-bit version. 64-bit processing allows us to further increase performance and the amount of memory that we can use for image processing. Every filter in the BCC package is either multi-threaded or OpenGL accelerated for top rendering speed. BCC 7 is also host to many new filters, which range from image restoration and grading tools to stunning 3D effects. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these new filters. The first one I want to show you is the BCC 3-way color grade. Now this filter gives you professional level digital color grading tools that were once the exclusive realm of high-end and very expensive proprietary color grading systems such as Luster or DaVinci. While most color correction filters let you adjust hue, brightness, saturation, and simple RGB values, the 3-way color grade is special because it lets you adjust separately the shadows, midtones, and highlights of your image via the industry standard lift, gamma, and gain controls. So we have these 3 color wheels here, and each one can be controlled independently. Each one also has its own reset button and the ability to be turned off to see what the image looks like without that particular effect. So I can adjust the color balance here. I want to put some more blue into the image. It's a bit too yellow, you know, sister golden hair, well, not anymore. And I can also adjust the gain for each of these color wheels. And I can fine-tune that change with a secondary slider below it here. It's pretty nice. Let's change some of these shadow areas in here. And let's do some more changing to the gain as well. Okay, so we've taken out some of that yellow, and this is good. I'm going to save what I've done here as a preset and show you what we're going to do with that later. Okay. Now I want to isolate the effect to just her face. So we're going to use one of the built-in masks that come with the tool. And the best one for the human face is the egg shape. Now this mask has been designed to fit most human faces, and it does so quite well. You can see how easily I can reshape the mask using the on-screen controls, which are very responsive. Now if I want to get a clear image of what this mask looks like, I can change the view mode here. So we can see the mask is kind of an oval shape right now. I can adjust the eggness of the shape with this slider here. I can increase or decrease the feathering, and I can control the feathering bias, all with on-screen controls. Now if you don't like on-screen controls for some reason, you can change all these things with sliders as well. Okay, so that's just to give you an idea, but let's see what I'm actually doing to the image here. Okay. That's pretty good. Let's open this up a little, increase the feathering a tad, maybe decrease it there, and let's bring in the bias and spread it out. Alright, now you can see that this mask fits her face exactly correct. Alright, so let's keep that the way it is. Now you notice there's nothing being done to the outside mask region. Well, we have separate controls to color grade the outside of the mask, and because I saved that preset earlier, I can just load that preset and get a perfect match between the 2 regions. This is going to make changing the background much faster, because now I can just tweak it a little bit, leave the face untouched, but adjust the background. Okay, so we have a nice filtered image here. Now, in addition to the masking tool, the filter also lets you select key modes. So if I wanted to, I could actually select her skin color and then have the effect apply just to her skin that way, or just to a background color. So this filter is really your one-stop color grading tool for whatever you want to do with it. And here we have a shot of a bridge in London, which was shot during the day. And just to give you another idea of what you could use this filter to do, let's make it look like it was shot day for night. So I'm just going to take the gamma way down there, and even without really doing a lot more to it, I can get a pretty good looking day for night effect. Alright, and if I wanted to, I could throw some more like red in there, maybe more of a sunset kind of look. All right, so that is a brief look at the three-way color grade. The next new filter I want to show you is BCC noise reduction. Now, anyone that's used a video camera has seen video noise before. That's this sort of grainy look that you get in areas that are poorly lit, like in shadows. Now, there's one way you could try to reduce the noise, which is to blur the image. So let's try that first and see what it does. Okay, well, we've gotten rid of the noise, but we've also reduced the usefulness of the image because now it's all blurred. So let's not try a blur, let's use noise reduction instead. Okay, now check this out. The noise has been reduced. Actually, it's pretty much gone, but we've maintained the detailed contrast and all of the shadows in our image. So to really show the difference before and after, I'm going to use this built-in compare mode. The compare mode by itself is also pretty fun because you can just slide the effect pre and post in your image and see it that way. Okay, anyway, here we go. Now check this out. Look at all that noise there, and on this side, it's gone. Not only that, but we've maintained the texture in the dark and shadow areas without having to blur it too much. So this looks so much better. In fact, I can tell you from experience, I have used this filter on wedding footage that was poorly lit, and it saved my life. Well, saved footage anyway. Here's another compare mode side by side, in case you want to look at it more of a big picture sort of thing. And again, you can see a much nicer image on the right here. The next new filter I want to show you is BCC lens blur. This filter emulates the bokeh effect of a real lens. If we go into this clip here, okay, now look at the highlights in the background of the image. That's bokeh. That's when the highlights of an image are blown out of focus, and take on the shape of the shutter leaves in the camera's iris. So that's the look we're going for with BCC lens blur. Now let's go into this clip here. Now there's lots of nice highlights in this image, so I'm going to enable the lens blur filter, and check it out. We have nice overblown highlights with the lens shape applied to it. Now you can control the shape of the iris with, again, on-screen controls, or manually with the sliders and pop-ups here. You can get different types of shapes. You can adjust the shading and curvature of the shape depending on what kind of look you want to achieve. You can even increase the bokeh shading to change the type of lens effect you are getting, like a cadiotropic lens. Okay, so you can even add noise to the lens blur to give it more of a actually shot on film kind of look, which is something you'll probably want to do. And once you get this filter, I am pretty sure you will want to use it whenever you can, because it's a really nice looking effect. Another great feature about the lens blur effect is the ability to use depth of field. Now, depth of field refers to the amount of distance covered by your camera's focal range or in focus zone. Now, one thing we're going to do is a rack focus. Now, anyone who has gone to film school probably knows what a rack focus is, probably a little too well. But anyway, it's when you shift the focus from background to foreground or vice versa. As you can see that effect happening here. And the way it's done is by using a Z-map, which is an artificial distance map. And you can use an actual computer-generated image for your Z-map, or just the luminance values in your clip. And you get a really nice looking rack focus by just animating the focal point. You can adjust the depth of field here, so I can make it wider or narrower, and then get the effect accordingly. Again, it is a little bit overdone, but at the same time it's overdone for a reason, because it looks really nice when it's done appropriately. So that is another great feature of lens blur. Next, I'm going to take something good and make it even better. I'm going to use the BCC lens blur as a transition in BCC lens transition. So let me apply that first to the middle here. Okay, so there we go. There's our lens blur effect. Here is the destination clip, so you can see where those other highlights are coming from. Now, because this is a BCC transition, it is fully automated. So all I had to do is apply it, and it can fully automate the length of the clip. Okay, now if that wasn't cool enough, you can actually customize the auto animation using the tuning curve here. Okay, so here is the transition represented as a line, and I can hold in to delay the transition. I can hold out to make it end faster. I can smooth it out by using the ease parameters here. I could make it more abrupt or, much more gradual. And all of this will still be fully automated when I'm done without having to keyframe any of this. All right, so let's turn that off, go back into it. Okay, check it out. A more controlled transition, but still fully automated. You can also do it fully manually if you want in %done mode. Okay, another really cool thing about the lens blur effect as a transition is the ability to change how it applies to the two layers. So maybe I only want the lens blur to happen on the incoming layer. See, now when I scrub through, it gives it like a totally different kind of feel. It's like you're coming out of a dream. Like, man, I dreamt I was driving, but really I was driving at night. So it's like scary to do that, but with a filter, it's safe because it didn't really happen, hopefully. All right, anyway, so this is a really good looking transition. Try not to overdo it, but if you do, I won't blame you because it is pretty cool. Okay, the last lens filter, I promise, is BCC Lens Shape. Now this is very similar to the lens blur in terms of adjustments and parameters, except instead of an iris, it lets you create your own lens shape. So here we've used the Avid logo, actually, as a lens shape. You can view it separately to see the alpha map here. You can create a lens shape from alpha maps or luminance values or RGB values. It's also really fun to type something and then use that as your lens shape, to be ironic anyway. So this added ability to create your own lens shape is really an icing on the cake to the set of lens filters in BCC 7. The next new filter in BCC 7 is called Beat Reactor. This awesome new feature can be used to generate keyframes based on an audio track within the AE composition. These keyframes can then be linked to other parameters in your comp, basically to any other filter in AE that can support keyframes. First, let's take a look at the Beat Reactor as an integrated feature in pre-existing filters. So here we see a snowboarder, and I have some music in the background. Let's listen to that. Okay, now I'm going to use two pre-existing BCC filters and use Beat Reactor with them to make an automated effect out of this music track. So first I'm going to use the Gaussian blur filter, which I did kind of dump on earlier. So let's be nice to it and give it a shining example for Beat Reactor. Okay, one of the other features I've used here is a pixel chooser, another pre-existing BCC effect, so I'm only using some of the values in the image. Turn it back on. Okay, now Beat Reactor is this last parameter down here. I have selected the audio file here. I've looked at the audio graph. So you can see this is the waveform for the audio. And this boxed off section here is the part that I am focusing on. So this is the only part that the filter is going to pay attention to right here. So if any bars go in there, it's going to change the filter. Alright, so we've got that set up, and we've also set it to apply to the vertical blur in the image. So if I turn that off and just preview the result now with the audio. Okay, check it out. Instantaneous musically synced effect. And look how easy this is. I can just change that. Maybe I want the horizontal blur instead. Oh, alright then. I can do that. Imagine if I had to do this manually, I'd have to create all new keyframes. But with Beat Reactor, it's really a snap, and no pun intended. Okay, so let's turn that back into the vertical blur. Now let's add a glow effect on top of this. So here's the BCC glow filter. We've used another pre-existing BCC feature, which is the motion tracker. You can see the motion path frames here. So I've tracked the snowboarder, and you can actually see the glow is pulsating. So the glow has already been synced up with the music, according to Beat Reactor. This time we've set it up a little differently though. So if I go into the Beat Reactor, you can see that I'm using it twice on glow intensity. So you can use one audio track and use it like 3 different times in the same filter. So that's really handy in case you want to do more than one effect. Here I'm using the same box I had before, so you can see, okay, down here where you're sampling the same area, but I'm also sampling the bass in the music, and I'm sampling that in these other parameters here. So now let's see how this looks with both filters applied, both reacting to the beat. Okay, look how that glow comes on with the bass drum, and the blur is still doing its own thing. It's a really interesting looking effect, and honestly, even without the music there, this would be kind of a handy way to create keyframes without, doing it manually. Okay, next I'm going to use the standalone beat reactor on another favorite, the extruded text filter from BCC6. Okay, so here's our text. We're going to use the same audio track. So the text isn't doing anything. We could try to move it manually, or we can just set it to music. So let's do that. So we have our beat reactor again. Now the standalone is pretty much the same as the integrated in terms of controls, except you have to generate keyframes. So you select your audio track here, and then you just say, okay, and you get this message. It says, all right, and now it's where it was before. You have all these keyframes here, which is just matching the beat. Another nice thing is that you can see how the keyframes fall off. So if I want to look at the individual rhythm here, I can see that the keyframes are falling off gradually, and I can change that. I can make it a linear degradation. Check that out. Or I can make it a sustaining set of keyframes. Okay, again, if you use After Effects and you keyframe a lot, this should mean something to you, and if not, well, it will. Okay, so there's that. That's just kind of messing around. Now to apply it to another filter, remember this filter doesn't have Beat Reactor built into it, but check this out. I'm going to take these three values and add an expression to each one and just link to the different Beat Reactor values here. Okay, so I'm linking the orientation, the position in Z-space, and the master jitter amount, and check this out. The applications of Beat Reactor go so far beyond what I can show you right now. Just picture any parameter, any filter that has keyframes you can use with Beat Reactor. So it could save a ton of time if you're doing like anything synced to music, like a music video. You can even use it for sound effects. And in some cases, I've used it for lip syncing, kind of like this. But anyway, I'm getting carried away. It's a fun filter, but let's move on. Okay, the next filter I want to show you is PinArt 3D. Now the name for PinArt is a reference to that toy that you might have seen that has a pin screen and allows you to push objects into the pins and make extruded shapes. Well, it's the same thing in the BCC PinArt filter, except it is so much cooler. So like, how would you like to be able to make extruded shapes and image maps from any video or image on your computer? Well, check it out. So I have this image of a hand here, and I'm just going to apply PinArt filter to it, so you can see me create this effect from scratch. Alright, so here's the default setting. It's using the luminance values of the hand to make the pins. I'm going to change the shape to 3D spheres and then turn on some AE lights to make it look more 3D. Okay, you can see here how it responds to the AE lights very naturally. This by itself is kind of a cool effect, like a 3D LED effect. Now as I change some of these settings here, what I'm going to do is emphasize the 3D nature of these pins. So I'm going to shift the effects out and rotate the object a little bit so you can see that it is actually extruding in 3D space. Okay, now to further push this point home, here's an After Effects layer, also a 3D layer, and I'm going to create a new camera, an AE camera, and I'm going to be able to just rotate around the object with the AE layer in the background, and you can see it moves very naturally in 3D space. So that's another great feature, the ability to use AE's camera with it and get different perspectives on it that way. Alright, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to delete that. Okay, next, let me show you how you can add a background to this pin screen. Currently we just have like the hand, and there's not really a screen for the hand, so I'm going to add that image of clouds there as a pin screen in the background. I'm just going to make sure this hand is selected as the foreground, then select the clouds as the background and increase the mix value here, And there we go. Now it looks like a true pin art filter, except, much cooler. As I rotate, you can see it is still a 3D extrusion on the pins that are in the background. And I can push them forward or even push them back if I want. Another cool thing you can do is that you can actually create a transitional wipe through this effect. So if I go into this shift wipe effect here, and I scrub the wipe progress parameter, you can see a transitional extrusion happening here. So it's coming from flat into the foreground, and I can bring the background into the foreground too. And I can adjust how soft or hard this transition is. There's several different preset styles for the wipe, giving you many fun looks to play with. And I have to force myself not to play with them all right now, so I'll just turn that off. Okay, now we've been focusing a lot on this 3D sphere shape. Let me just show you again quickly one of the other shapes we offer here, 3D planes. Okay, so this also has a nice kind of effect look to it. You can change it to grid lines, which I really like. I can't explain it, I just really like 3D grid images, something about growing up in the 80s perhaps, I don't know. But this is a fun effect to play with. And you can see that this is still 3D. Okay, so going back into the spheres, I'm going to reset this look to the way we had it before. And I want to show you some of the distortion effects. Like here's a twist effect you can do. I mean, try doing this with the pin art toy, right? You couldn't do it, or you could, but then you'd break it, and then you'd have to buy another one. You can also add a noise map to the pin screen, fully automated noise map. So you can see that as an auto-animating transformer there. Turn that back off and disable that too. We also offer a dispersion transformer, which you gotta have it, right? Because look at that. You need that effect in this kind of filter. And then you can change the dimensions of the dispersion, and you can use the scatter wipe on this too, so you can have your lovely pin screen get destroyed by the dispersion wipe effect. Again, you could really just play with this filter all day. At least I could, and I do. But anyway, to show you another cool effect, let me go back into the 3D planes. You can also twist and spin the individual pins depending on the shape. So here I've got the spin parameter for all the pins, and you get a really neat kind of rotational effect that way. I can increase the variation on the spin so that it looks a little bit more random. Let me turn up the noise map here just to keep it in real 3D. Like, let's not cut any shortcuts now. So check this out. We've got a really interesting looking pin screen here, and all the pins are being spun around, and I can even tumble them. Just a really neat looking effect. It reminds me of when people at a ball game hold up all the posters and it makes an image or something like that. Another nice thing about pin art is that it works really well with other filters as well. It's really common to apply a glow effect or a light rays effect to these kinds of filters, and so I'm just gonna, add a green glow here. Maybe turn up the intensity of the glow a little bit. Alright, so now it looks almost like a electronic light display that's coming to life or something. The possibilities go so far beyond what I can show you right now. I'll just leave you with this effect of a face with pin art and beat reactor at the same time. So if you liked pin art, you're gonna like particle array. Particle array is like pin art, except it is a 3D generator. It generates a 3D array of particles and offers several interesting ways of manipulating the array based on graph controls or alternate AE layers, and fractal noise patterns, random dispersion, and more. Like pin art, particle array supports AE lights and camera for simple integration into AE 3D compositions. The filter also includes an integrated beat reactor for creating dynamic animations directly influenced by audio layers. And this filter, like pin art, is also OpenGL enabled for really fast previews and renders. Another fun filter that is just a blast to mess around with and create some really cool graphics with. Okay, we're getting near the end here. Next is the BCC warp filter. Now the warp filter allows you to generate static and animated image warps based on AE spline shapes. So here I've got some footage of a bridge, which I generated a kind of rough winds effect on it here. And I did that by just creating a few masks, actually just 2 masks really, and I animated the path of the mask to simulate like a wobbly bridge. Created this boundary mask on the top of the other 2, and then I just applied warp, and that was it. So really the only work you have to do here is to create masks in AE. The filter does the rest. And you can also adjust how sensitive the warping is. For example, if I turn on this warp grid feature, and I can change the sensitivity here and the accuracy, so I can make a really fine-tuned warp effect, or if accuracy isn't that important, I can get more of a global warp effect. Now this does contrast with the AE warp filter, which doesn't give you these fine controls. Another advantage to the BCC warp filter is that it's OpenGL enabled, which means it's really fast because it works off your graphics card and not your CPU. You can see how quick the filter updates here. Moving on, the next filter I want to show you is BCC MORPH. The MORPH filter lets you transform or morph one still image into another. Like the warp filter, this filter is OpenGL enabled for speedy working time and previews, and it requires the use of AE masks. And you can see here that we've created quite a few masks to turn our lovely lady into this lovely lady. And once you create the masks, you only have to keyframe the start and end of the whole transition in the filter UI. So really, it's easy to use if you are accustomed to creating masks in AE. Now, what if you want to do a morph effect, but you want to use it